In this video, I'm going to talk about the BILS project, which is a project I ran with Alex McLean for JISC, and it was concerned with creating business intelligence for learning about students, making use of open data sources. I'm going to talk about the context of the project, what questions the project posed, the approach we took. I will give a brief demonstration of the tool we developed for integrating our local student data with open data sources, and then I'll talk quite briefly about some of the findings of the project and some of the outcomes. So the context for this project is the increasing need for higher education organisations to understand their student origins. The increase in fees has changed the way that higher education authorities justify their recruitment procedures, and they need to have good, reliable data to suggest that their recruitment procedures are working. There's also a need to identify gaps and potential areas where recruitment can change, or potential regions of the country that recruitment is kind of failing at. There's also an increasing need to identify the effects of widening participation policies, which requires the manipulation of different kinds of data and different kinds of information to what has usually been found in higher education organisations. On the flip side of this, there's been an incredible growth in open data sources in the last sort of 3 years. So there's an increasing pressure on publicly funded organisations to make their data available to the general public, and there's also an increasing pressure for that open data to be used in real applications. The BILS project poses 4 key questions. How can higher education organisations take advantage of open data? What types of tools are needed to contextualize open data sources? How can open data sources be used to enrich local databases? And then how successful are open data-based approaches? So the key difference between what's happening in BILS and what is generally seen with open data is that we're trying to use open data sources to enrich a local data source. So we're trying to leverage the information provided by this open data source to gather information about our local data source. The BILS project took a 3-step approach to answering the key questions. So first of all, we built an understanding of the types of open data available. So the sort of things we were looking for there was, how is the data organized? How is it structured? How can we align it with our local data sources? How do people even identify this open data in the first place? Following that, we built a geographical visualization tool that allows us to interactively connect local data to open data. And then we carried out an evaluation of how we felt this tool would be used and what the kind of problems our end users were facing when using this tool. So this is the BILS interface. So here we can select a source of data from the list of things that we've already imported, and from within that data source we can select a specific column or piece of information that we're specifically interested in. We also have the ability, that I won't show you, but we can import any kind of data from any kind of open source. We can then select the range of admissions data. So here we're looking at admissions from July 29th, 2011 to the current date. We can show the application density if we wish, and the information is then displayed on this map and histogram. So these areas show regions of the country from which we are admitting students, and the colours represent the kind of rank of income score, which is the open data that we're looking at. We also have this kind of histogram which shows how the admissions correlate with the rank of income score. So here we are looking at Sheffield, and we can see that we're picking students, about 100 students that have a relatively low rank of income score, and a similar number that have a relatively high rank of income score. The neat thing about the interface is that we can kind of move around and everything will update in real time. So if we want to look at how Manchester is getting on, or how our admissions from Manchester compare to those from Sheffield, we can see that the pattern of admissions is very different, that we're picking out lots of people that have a relatively high income score. The other thing that we can do is zoom out and see how this compares to the whole country. So all this kind of interactive process allows us to kind of pull in a data set, rapidly analyse it, and get a good overview of what
that data set means in terms of our admission.
Our findings with regard to data was that it was often quite difficult to find useful data sources. Despite there being a rather large hub of open data, even within that, it's quite difficult to identify the correct search terms that allow you to find the data that you're interested in. However, when you found the data, it was generally well structured. It was usually tabular, the formats were consistent with each other, it usually had good headings, and the data was well defined. So we found no problems in extracting information from the data, but we did find problems in how people identified that data in the first place. The general approach for using open data is that you can create generic open data tools, and what we found in this project was that it's actually quite difficult to create really useful generic open data tools. We also found that open data sources can give you a kind of indication of certain trends, but individual sources are not enough to give you the full picture. You really don't have the level of granularity that you need in order to make that kind of drill down full picture. One of the interesting things I think we found in this project is that a way to kind of finesse this problem is to have a programmer on board, an open data programmer that can kind of manipulate data, that can develop bespoke tools quite rapidly, and that can really kind of work alongside people to give them the full knowledge that they need in order to understand the impact that this data is having. The principal outcomes of the project have been a publicly available geographical importer tool, and this is available on GitHub. We have a demonstrator tool, which was the thing I demoed, which shows you how you can combine open data with our student data. And we have a publicly available analysis of data.gov.uk, which raises some of the issues and problems that we found in the duration of the project.